Okay, so we'll get started, and I'm sure people will join as we go. But thank you for being here. I'm so excited. I have so many questions for you. Like so many people wrote in and asked me to ask you things, so I'm very excited.
I
So
hope I can help.
hi everyone. So I have Jess Baumgardner on today. She is a positivity ambassador, a mom of 3, and a health coach with a focus in fertility, pregnancy, and motherhood. So welcome.
Thank you.
My first question for you, and since I focus a lot on like how entrepreneurs can take the leap, what was the thing that inspired you to take the leap into entrepreneurship?
That's a really good question. I feel like there are probably a lot of different things, but two things I think that really pushed me were my desire to have flexibility. I really, I worked for almost 10 years for someone else on someone else's schedule. And I really wanted to have the flexibility to be able to have a family and be home with my kids when I wanted to. I still wanted to work in some capacity, and I was having trouble figuring out how I could do both. And I always, since I was a kid, have been starting businesses. So I would sell rocks on the side of the road. I would build a Halloween like um, trail in my woods and charge people to go through that. So I always knew I like had a desire for that flexibility and the creativity and the opportunity to work for myself. So I would say my 2 reasons were like that flexibility to be home, and then also I'm really bad at working for people. And I think after 10 years of having different relationships at different companies, I never got fired or anything like that, but I always had I I have very strong opinions about how I work and how I get things done and how I manage my time. And so it's really hard for me. It's difficult for me to work for someone else who has a different style of working. That's not to say I can't work with contractors or other people in partnership, but when it came down to like this is your boss, this is your boss, this is your boss kind of like structure, it was really difficult for me to be confined in that and thrive.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really, I feel like you're not alone. Entrepreneurs love their freedom. So that sounds really great. So you took the leap from a marketing career, right, into health coaching?
That's correct. Yeah. So I started my career in advertising. I was working at agencies in Philly. So I was on the account management side. So basically, what that means, if you're not familiar, is when clients would come in, I was the go-to person they would be speaking with, and I was in between them and our creative teams. So I was the one relaying information, making sure that things were proofread, that the campaigns were meeting the objectives, and things like that, getting them to do more work with us. I went from advertising then into marketing and worked for several big companies before I decided to work for myself.
And when you started to health coach, was that an organic transition, or did you have to, get a certificate, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, so I didn't even know health coaching was a thing, honestly. So I started doing health coaching informally in 2011, if you can believe it. It was a long time ago. And formally in 2013 when I was attending the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So that is the oldest health coaching school. It's where I got my certification. It was a 1-year program, and I was doing it while I was commuting from New York City to Philadelphia. I was leaving my job at Food Network and moving back to Philly. And so I would do it when I was on the train, kind of like in that transitionary period.
Oh, wow. That must have been really, that must have really taught you how to manage your time, no?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yes, yeah.
So when you were in, because I have a lot of people who are in that, who are interested in health coaching or some sort of like health/fitness coaching. And often I've talked to them about going to school because they're not sure if they really need the certificate. And they are just like you, kind of like coaching on the side.
Mhm.
What do you think why do you think it is important to get this certificate, or is it not? What is your thoughts there?
I mean, to be totally honest with you, there are definitely different levels or layers, maybe levels of like people who should be advising you on your health and fitness and I think a certification definitely is helpful. So like for a from a perspective, I would want to know that you understand the body and you've gone through training to understand how the body works and moves. And so I think it's definitely important there. When it comes to health as well, like, there's people who go to school for 8 years or so to become an RD, registered dietitian. I feel like they are definitely in a way better place than I am to tell you how to take hold of like some sort of issue you're dealing with when it comes to your health. When it comes to like more health coaching, lifestyle coaching, I feel like you can definitely help people without the certification as long as you're not prescribing them things or recommending things that they really should talk to a doctor or a registered dietitian about. That said, I do think having a certification gives you more of a legitimacy of, it gives you a legitimacy about you. Like I am more likely to work with someone who I see has gone through some sort of schooling or certification to be where they are. I know that with IIN, I learned a ton of different coaching styles. I was practicing on people. I was doing work before I started working with other people. And I think that kind of helps you to determine what your style is when it comes to coaching. It helps you to determine, you've done research, you've seen all the things that are out there. You're not just like prescribing one way of doing things. So that's my overall answer.
So just to marry your health coaching with your background in marketing, how did I was talking to some coaches just a few days ago about, there are a lot of coaches. How did you distinguish yourself from all the others? And how did you have the confidence to do that?
Yeah, I mean, back when I was a health coach, no one was really a health coach. Like, I didn't know what it was until I was on a blog one day because I was doing my own research for my health. And I saw that this woman who was developing recipes was a health coach who went to IIN. Before that, I had no idea what they were. I spent years trying to explain to other people what I was doing. I still have to tell friends and family, what it is that they do for work. So, but it's definitely a lot more saturated than it was back in 2013 when I started. So I would say, my coaching and my progression has kind of happened organically. I started coaching women through any, point in their lifestyle, probably even more so like people who were like getting married, or like looking to just better their overall health and well-being, because that's the stage I was in when I started this work. I had gotten into this when I was getting ready for my wedding and not feeling great. Then as my life progresses and I was pregnant, I became a mom, I've experienced all these other things with my life, and that has changed my practice because I realized the more I was doing work on myself and learning things, that I wanted to use that stuff and those tools to help other people through it. So I would say I'm sorry, I'm long-winded, but I would say to wrap that up, I think you have to kind of feel out the people you want to work with. What makes you super happy when you help someone solve a problem? What is the problem you're solving? And, who is that person that you're solving it for? Don't get into this career or any career as an entrepreneur if you're not actually passionate about the work. I see a lot of people who get into this and they take on clients that they are not a good match with, and then they end up resenting them, and then they end up resenting the work, and you're almost back at this, square one where you were when you were working for someone else. So I've had to fire clients before when it wasn't working out. And, it's not to say it's a bad relationship, but if it's not working, it's not working. And I'm not in this business to just take people's money. And I don't think anyone should be. Like, if it's not a match, then you need to move on and you need to just define what it is that your practice works on.
Yeah, that's great advice. I've kind of watched your career grow and pivot to mostly, it seems like coaching mothers. How did you, I'm assuming you did that because of your own experience, but how did you actually make that pivot, both from a health coaching perspective and from a marketing perspective?
That's a really good question. And another thing that I really like to talk about is the fact that coaches need coaches. So, I'm sure you have a coach, I have coaches. And when I get to a point where I'm feeling stagnant or like I need some information, I will work with someone to get that out. So, last year, honestly, I lost track of time since Graham was born. Before Graham was born, I felt like I was in a place where I should be working with moms exclusively, or like people who wanted to become mothers. Like, fertility is like super, I love working on that puzzle. I think it's really satisfying and I'm passionate about that. Like women who are pregnant, trying to navigate that, women who become moms and trying to navigate that. And I feel like it was speaking to me, but I was so nervous to take the leap to like lose this audience that I had built up for 5-6 years. I was worried that if I went, pretty exclusively down that mom path, which I had been like kind of shying away from for so long, that I was going to really pigeonhole myself into an area that I wasn't confident could work because I hadn't been there yet. So I would say I needed someone else to kind of help push me out of that comfort zone of like working with the same people I'd always worked with. And that's what I did. So I hired a coach. They were all like, you need to work with this group. Like, don't be afraid of, only working with moms. It's a huge audience. And this is what you're passionate about. This is where you find the most joy. Like when I was doing my own homework of like writing down the best clients I've had, or those moments where I was like, yes, this is why I do the work I do. It was always when I was the first person that they texted when they became pregnant, or they were texting me when they were in labor, and, or they were asking me what a doula was, or like wanted to have easy meals when the baby was home. And so that's really what helped to push me into the pivot, and work pretty exclusively with moms. I still do have clients who are not, but I'm not going to just drop them because I changed, my audience.
Yeah, and as someone who's not a mom, it's interesting because I do follow you and I'm still interested in things that you're talking about. Because, if you can do it as a mom, like someone who's not a mom could definitely do it, like get your shit together. I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point that I don't know if we have this like huge fear that we're going to lose our audience, but I think when you're authentically yourself, people are there for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that was?
That's totally true. And I'm glad you said that. I was so afraid of losing that audience, but it wasn't really, it's not an audience, like I was always me. I was just shying away from being a mom. I was afraid that if I said I was a mom too loudly, that all the people who weren't moms would be like, I can't relate to this anymore. And what you said, I actually found to be true, where I'm sure, some people dropped off, but a lot of people were like, I'm just super curious about this because someday I do want to be there. And I'm really interested in learning some strategies now before that happens. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So as a mom and as an entrepreneur, what's your advice for women who are dealing with both?
Sorry, I lost the last part of the question. For
So
dealing with,
what's your advice with dealing with both and
oh,
making sure you that whole like balancing act?
yeah, I would say time blocking is my best friend. So obviously right now it's a little bit different given the situation that's going on. But if it was a normal day, the way I get my work done is by time blocking. So when I'm with the kids, I'm with the kids. When I'm working, I'm working. And in order to feel productive and like I had a successful, say I have 2 hours to get things done, I need to be able to check things off my list. And I won't be able to do that if I'm like in between email and text messages and Instagram and editing photos and writing blog posts. I need to focus on one task at a time, set a timer, and then when that's done, I move on to the next thing. So with that, I don't make huge to-do lists. I literally will just, actually right now, I have a planner, but with everything going on right now, I literally take Post-it notes and I put in big Sharpie marker, like the 3 things I need to get done for that day. And I put them up on my desk. And when I have an hour or 2 to get work done, like my husband and I kind of tag team, I take my Post-it notes and stick them on my laptop, take them upstairs. And like, that's my, like, once I can crumple those up, hopefully I get through them all, then I'm done. And I don't think about it then when I'm with the kids. Cause I find if I'm too up in the air, kind of like floating between both worlds, that I'm not truly present in my work and I'm not truly present with the kids. And as cliche as that sounds, like I definitely notice a difference when I just like watch them and like play with them and like am fully present with them. So I just try to separate things as best I can.
Thank you. Yeah. That's like good advice for everyone, I feel like.
Yeah,
Block
yeah.
scheduling.
Time blocking is really great actually for everyone because it helps to keep your focus on one task at a time. The key though for it is like you can't have your email open. You need to put your phone away. Like you can only do and focus on the one thing that is on that list for that time.
Definitely. So, in terms of young entrepreneurs, what is some of your marketing advice for them right now?
So one big piece of advice I have for marketing or otherwise is if there's a piece of your business you're not an expert in, you either need to become an expert in that or delegate it to someone else. Find someone who is. So while you're building your business, if you have tight budgets, I understand that you kind of have to like be scrappy and do a lot of things yourself. I was the same way. I still am, but right now, like I'm not good at Pinterest. Like I don't understand that world. I know though enough to know that it drives sorry, I don't know if I can curse, a shit ton of traffic to my website, to any website. It's like as big as or just below Google in terms of being a search engine. I don't have time to learn that right now. I'm not going to do a good job with it. So I do have someone who's an expert who helps me with Pinterest. You know, if there are things that I do think you should always be like on trend, understand what the trends are, like know how to market yourself. But if there's a piece like Facebook ads or something that like you should be doing, but you don't know how, you don't want to do it you're not sure if you'll do it the right way or you don't have time to do it right. See if you can hire someone, look and see if you can hire someone who's a student, someone who's just starting out, who can do it kind of, scrappy. There's websites that you can hire people for cheap. I'm trying to think of the one. It's not Fiverr because that's like logos and artwork. Upwork, that's like one example. You can find websites like that where you can almost like name your price and find people who are just working from home on multiple projects for multiple people. And so their rates kind of become pretty affordable. So that I would say is number one. Like, don't try to do everything yourself if you can't.
Mhm.
And, the things that you think could be really important for you, have someone do them first so you can learn from them. And then maybe you can take it in-house and do it for yourself.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. So we're often told that like consistency is really important on social media. Do you agree with that? And if you do, is there anything else to that puzzle that you think is important?
It's really interesting because social media is something I'm definitely on all the time, but I don't think I am the person to ask about social media. Like, honestly, I feel like it's just something I do because I know I'm basically just sharing my life, right? I'm not using it as like the most effective marketing tool, I guess I would say. Like I'm almost just using it because I like to share content. Every time I provide something, I want to make sure it's providing value. So every time I get ready to write a post, I'm like, if I'm reading this post and I'm not me, is this worth my time? So
Mhm.
I would say, if you, as far as your question on consistency, I would say I do think it's important that you always have the same voice, that you always have the same draw and, that value draw, that everything you do is providing value in some way. Even if I am doing a sponsored post, which helps to pay my bills, if I'm doing a post for this company, I still want to make sure it's providing value to the end user, even if they're not interested in that product.
Mhm.
So what I mean by that is if I'm writing for a probiotic, which I use, I'm not going to just say buy this brand because XYZ, right? I'm going to want to educate you on why I use a probiotic, why you might want to look into a probiotic and provide information that maybe you haven't read before, or kind of like go a little bit more in depth than what you might see in a typical sponsored post. So I would say not an expert in Instagram, though the way I have worked it up until now is to make sure everything I'm doing is providing some sort of value. And of course, there's poster days where I'm like lazy and it's not providing value. I'm just posting a picture of Carmen, right? But at the end of the day, I do try to make sure that that is like my number one filter, more than like the image filters or like, you know, the pretty aesthetic. I'm kind of just like making sure that the words and the things I'm delivering are something that are helpful.
And so if social media isn't the way you've brought in clients, how have you done that in the past?
Word of mouth actually is still, I think, pretty big. I get a lot of my clients just from other clients telling their friends about the work we've done. So, you know, I think Instagram is great and I do think it helps to get you exposure, but I truly believe that my audience is on Facebook mostly, which I also need to get better at. And I think it's on Pinterest and like driving back to my website. And I think it's through word of mouth and like email. And like, you know, if you have an email list like that, you actually own, right? So you should always be building your email list, because if Instagram goes away one day or it's no longer a huge trend that it is now, or like you don't own any of those followers, but your email account, like those people who signed up to be on your list, you have them. Like you know, they are people who actually did more than just click follow. Like they gave you their email address. They allow you to enter into their inbox every week or every month or whatever your cadence is. Those are the people who I think you should be nurturing. And I'm not, you know, saying that I'm an expert there either, but I would say like you're starting out, definitely have a presence on social media, but really think about where your audience is. Like, are they actually on Instagram, or do you just need to be there so you look legitimate? Are they on email? Are they on Facebook? Like maybe look into other places, you know, that they may be hiding.
And just to pivot a little bit, if people don't know this, Jess is also the co-founder of the Good Fest. And one of the things I'm really interested in is some of the people who are tuning in have a partner in their new business. And so since you've done both, what do you feel are like the pros and cons? And what should people be careful about?
That is a great question. I would say the pros are having friends while you work, right? It's always nice to have colleagues and friends to be doing this work with that you enjoy. You know, entrepreneurship can be super lonely if you're by yourself all the time. You know, and you're kind of like working out of your home. You're not surrounded by colleagues anymore. You don't have people to run ideas by. So I would say it's great to have like support. I would say it's also great financially because you have more people's skin in the game. I would say it's great from like a brain power standpoint, because instead of having just one brain, you have three brains, you have six hands instead of two hands in terms of the Good Fest. So, you know, there was a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of like different opinions. There was a lot of great ideas that came out of having a partnership. I would say if there are negatives, it's that as well. Like you have a lot of different opinions. You might not agree with what partner B says, and you can't just say, like if you're working at a typical 9 to 5, you could kind of like hide back and not deal with the problem maybe if you didn't want to. Whereas when it's your business and your baby, you kind of have to like come to an agreement and determine what is the best path forward without causing a lot of drama or making it personal. So I think, you know, friendships versus business partners can get a little dated, and you have to remember to keep your friendship there, but also, you know, when the business hats are on, the business hats are on. So I would say that's probably the biggest negative.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And like, you know, people have different work styles. People like, this definitely wasn't a negative, but like I have children and, you know, not everyone has children. So I can't expect other people to understand what is going on in my household or why I can't be on a phone call or a meeting. You know, even now, you can't expect someone to know what they don't know. And so if your way of living and your way of working is different than your partner's, you need to have like an open, honest conversation about that, I think, from the start.
Yeah. So how did you learn to have those open conversations? Because I know that in your business, you're not only, you don't just work with the Good Fest, but you also have partnerships with brands and stuff like that. So
I'm, yeah, right now I'm like kind of no filter. I'm always just like, hey, I got 3 kids under 5 at home with me. Like, I'm happy to do a conference call with you, but I just want you to know that they're all around. Like, I kind of am just like super blunt and honest about my home situation now, because I found that I was getting myself too stressed and anxious when I was trying to like hide things, when I was like, yeah, I can do all the things. I can do that call. I can go to that meeting. And then I was like so stressed out because I couldn't, or, there were kids around me, or like Carmen was home from school. So now, like, I would say, like, set your boundaries. So make sure everyone knows what your boundaries are. Now, like, my boundaries are, I don't really do phone calls and I don't really do meetings. Like, unless they're coaching clients, of course, but I try to do everything I can over email, because I do a lot of my work at night. Like, I do it now when the kids are asleep. I do it when people usually aren't working. And so I'm happy to do phone calls at this time, but no one else is. So I think like setting your boundaries of like what you're able to do, that's not going to super stress you out. And, make sure people know that. And, of course you can be flexible and accommodating where you need to be, but that's your preferred way of getting things done.
yeah, definitely. In terms of your brands that you work with, how does that work for you? I know some people who are starting that. So did that happen organically for you, or, what's your experience with that?
So funny stories, like back in the day, I was kind of just like posting terribly on Instagram, and that's when I met Kate Van Horn, my business partner in Good Fest, along with Jen. And Kate was like, why are you not taking this seriously? And so she actually helped me kind of like figure out how to work with brands. So I owe a lot of that actually to her, because she was doing it at the time. She helped me like clean up my feed and like start, kind of like getting some more structure to what I was doing. And I think, that was super helpful. And then like, it's all about kind of, coming across confident and professional. So, the same, almost like what would you expect if someone was presenting an offer to you? I think I would expect some sort of written document that has information about them, that's professionally done, has your, what you offer in terms of an audience, your aesthetic, your value that you bring to this person's audience. Like, how can you bridge the gap between Nike, I'm saying, and your audience? You have to almost like paint that picture for the brand. Don't expect them to do all the work, because they are super busy. There's so many people right now doing brand partnerships and influencer work. What's going to make you stand out, I think, is a super professional portfolio that says who you are, what you've done, what makes you different, and how having a specific idea of how you can help that brand you're approaching to get more exposure or get more sales. Their bottom line is either going to be exposure to your audience or money. So how are you going to get them one of those things?
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So, in terms of, like creating that portfolio, what are your kind of like must-dos?
I would say, again, like have some structure to it. So who you are, what you do, and why that's unique. So, if I was saying I was a health coach, there's so many health coaches out there now. Like, why is my specific coaching style or audience going to be the people they want to reach? Or, why is my style going to be who they want to work with? And then I would show past work that you've done. If you have anything, if you can pull anything, even if you're just starting out, like, is there work you've done for anyone? Can you take on some free brand partnerships just to show how you work with brands, or how you could develop a story for a brand and put it out there? So show past work. Some people don't put their rates in. I do, just because I like to just keep things like, here, this is what I do. I'm not really good at like the whole sales aspect and like going back and forth. So it's like, here's everything. So I put rates in with like packages, and then I also put in some testimonials of like brands I've worked with in the past so that they know how, you know, that I do come with being vouched for. And I would have it designed. So either use Canva, which can be free if you want it to be, or it could be like $12 or $13 a month if you want the professional version, or find, you know, someone again who's on Upwork who has a design background, or, you know, a friend of yours who's a designer, and have them help you put something professional together. But I think having it designed with a picture of you, have your stats in there, you know, for your platforms. And then outside of that document, which you can kind of keep pretty generic about you, in your email to them, let them know again, like why you're approaching them specifically and why you're going to be able to help them.
And just to pivot a little bit into some rapid fire questions,
Sure.
out of curiosity, like if you could give Jess advice back when she was starting as an entrepreneur, what would it be?
Two things. I would say be okay with risk. You know, you have to be okay with risk. I'm still like kind of okay with it. I'm not like 100% like, yes, let's go. But, you know, if you don't risk something, you don't go after something, you can never see what's on the other side. I would say that kind of ties into the next thing I'm going to say, which is if you decide to go into something, you can't be so fully still in the old part, because you'll never be able to give enough energy into the new thing. So what I mean by that is I was starting health coaching while I was doing health coaching school, while I was working full-time for Food Network and then Comcast. And like, I was trying to do all these things and I wasn't fully dedicating any time to my business starting. Like, it was kind of just like there, I would take on random clients when I had time after work. But it wasn't until I had my first daughter and I fully got into, like, when I had free time, I was working on that business, that I was able to realize it and get to a point where like I did have 17 clients at a time. I was starting the Good Fast with Kate and Jen. You know, I was like actually building the business, and like you kind of have to take a risk a little bit to jump into that. And then that goes into finances, which I think can be a really big player in this game of starting your own business. I would say like be open to different revenue streams. You know, if you do need to dip your toes into the water a little bit with your new business and keep your old gig, I think that's fine, as long as you're able to dedicate significant time over there. That might mean your nights and weekends. But I have found revenue in places I didn't expect. And I think you have to kind of be open to like, yeah, you might be a health coach, but there's other opportunities out there for people who are health coaches, that is not just taking on clients. So I've taught cooking classes online. I have done events with Good Fast when we were doing cooking classes in the city. When I have done brand partnerships, obviously, which you see now. I have, I've done a lot of different things that I wasn't fully aware of when I was becoming a health coach. So I would say be open to different revenue streams outside of just the one thing you have your eye on.
Yeah. That's great advice. So what is your favorite marketing product, like things that you can use to help you promote yourself, that you use on a, monthly basis or daily basis?
Later is a tool I can't live without. So I've had that for a couple years now. It's one of the Instagram scheduling tools. So it allows me to kind of like, I still do plan things pretty much daily of like what I'm going to post, because I have to be in the moment of like wanting to talk about it. But it allows me to, when I think of a caption, to put it all in there and kind of like get things ready before I go live. So it can kind of like draft things in later. It allows me to have line breaks in my paragraphs, which I really love. And, if I have a brand partnership, I could put that in there for Thursday and like go back to it and write my paragraphs on my computer for my caption. So that's one thing I love. Another thing I love, I just found this email system called Flowdesk, Flodesk. It may still be in beta, I'm not sure, but it's beautifully designed emails. Jenna Kutcher actually did a series of templates for them. I got it in beta, like I said, so it was relatively inexpensive. I was just having so many issues with MailChimp. Like, it was always such a hassle for me to write an email, because I had to like have my designed header moved over and have this piece moved over and like make sure everything was linking correctly. With Flowdesk, they're beautifully designed email templates that you can just plug and play as you're going. And to me, that's really important right now because I don't have a ton of time. I love Squarespace for email, for websites. I've been using them for years. Again, really easy templates that you can do yourself. I made my own website that I have now. We made the Good Fest website. So I think those are like my key things. And right now, like Pinterest and 𝘗𝘰𝘮𝘬, again, is like not a world I'm super familiar with, but I know it's driving so much traffic to my blog posts now that I'm writing. If you're spending time writing blog posts, which I still think you should be doing because it allows someone to like get to know you and like hear your voice and your opinions, make sure they're getting out there. So like start to research 𝘗𝘰𝘮𝘬 and Pinterest and how to like get your posts out there so that people are seeing them. I think last month I had 150,000 users come over to or click on my pin for one of my blog posts I wrote about baby names. Like so unexpected. But I used to have like, I don't know, 0 people clicking on my pins. And now with this system in place, it's really picking up speed. So.
Oh, that's awesome. And just out of curiosity, how do you stay on top of marketing trends? Like, how did you find out about Pinterest and 𝘗𝘰𝘮𝘬𝘮?
I like to dedicate a little bit of time a week. Right now, again, it's not as easy to kind of just like seeing what people are doing. Like I spend like, again, I'll time block it. I'll spend like 30 minutes just like seeing what other people are doing for marketing. I also subscribe to an email called Product Hunt, and they are on top of like the new startups and things that are happening in the product world. And I find out about a lot of new things on there as well.
Oh, awesome. So that's how you, that's great. I've always wondered because it's so interesting how marketing people can stay informed on things. You're like, how did you hear about that? And then that's awesome.
Yeah. I follow people too that are in that world. So I follow experts. So like I follow 𝘞𝘰𝘮𝘬𝘬𝘮. I follow this woman named Gemma who's like really good at funnels, which I haven't started yet. I follow people who have like specific areas of expertise and they'll talk about those things. And then I can get it from them and go research it more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. If people are interested in your work, where can they, find out about you?
So my website is jessbaumgardner.com and my Instagram is @jessbaumgardner, and I answer every email myself. So if anyone ever has a question about health coaching or entrepreneurship or otherwise, I might take a little while to get back to you with all the kids at home, but I'm happy to do so.
And, just because this is this time right now, what is your advice to mothers in the quarantine?
Oh, yeah. Don't try to do all the things. So like, again, the way I do my work, that's how I'm managing the house as well. So my husband and I are definitely a team. He's super involved. He, has a full-time job. So, but we kind of like delegate and, have like a few tasks that we want to make sure the kids are getting done or we're getting done. And again, it's just like, I want to make sure that they've done some sort of learning today, that they've eaten something healthy, and we've gotten outside. Like, I try not to have the scheduled out things. I just want to hit those like bullets in some way. So I would say like take the pressure off and just try to, we're all in survival mode right now. I would say like, don't put so much pressure on you right now. Just try to hit like the big things that are important to you.
And I have one more question. I forgot to ask this earlier, and I'm really interested. As a health coach, like, what are some of the pillars that you really you stand by?
It's interesting because like I actually got away from calling myself a health coach for a little while because I was finding that I was getting a lot of people who are just coming to me trying to lose weight, and that is like not what I'm about. So I would say for me, the things I look for are like lifestyle changes. Like it's almost like a marriage between your health and a life coach, where it's like I've had clients who've gotten divorces, I've had clients who've quit jobs, I have clients who've moved, and I think there's always something that's blocking you from, the eating healthier or getting some movement in. And so when I work with clients, it's about like just really digging into like everything and figuring out like what's going on, where are the blocks, how can we restructure the lifestyle so that then, we can get some more vegetables in, like we can get some movement in. But truly it's about like yourself and your own blocks and like, your relationships with others, and like, where do you find joy and inspiration, you know, kind of like digging into a lot of those things. And then you move on to like the food and, you know, getting enough water.
Are you still taking on new clients right now as a health coach?
I am, yes. And I actually reduced my prices because I felt like, again, like the health coaching industry was getting so popular, and I felt like everyone was like pushing to like raise your rates, show value. And like, so I did that. And then I was like, it just never felt right for me. It always felt icky. Like I felt weird charging people what I was charging. And so I just in the last couple months have reduced my rates to something that I feel like is a lot more manageable, and it's on a sliding scale, because I just want to be able to do this work when I have the time for something that feels good to that person, like, and that makes me feel good. So so I do, yes, I have a Calendly on my Instagram profile and my website that has all my open slots for the week. So those couple hours that I have each day are open.
That's so cool. You don't really hear that. And I think it's really important that prices do match your, you know, what you're trying to do. That's really awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, does anyone have questions? You're welcome to unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
I thought I would have a lot of questions, but you gave so much. Here, I'll put my video on high. You gave so much value, Jess. And one of the things that really popped out for me was just like how realistic you are with what you can get done.
I thought that was
really
helpful.
nice. And Pinterest is something that's on my list too.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps that you're like so established and you're like, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, well, I think that's like, thank you for saying that. I think that's one thing that, you know, you kind of see happen when people have been in an industry for a while. They're like, you need to charge way more, and like, you need to exude this confidence that you know everything there is to know about the industry. And like, I was never comfortable with that. Like, I'm always still learning. I'm always still trying to figure it out. Like, I'm always changing my prices, right? And I feel like at the end of the day, it has to be something like when you show up with that client or with the work you're doing, like, are you happy? Do you feel good about it? And if anything about that situation is like icky, then a situation, it has to change in some way. Like, I used to always say to Kate and Jen when we were doing Good Fest things, like we were working with partners or sponsors, like, are we going to resent this? Like, are we going to resent this partner that we're working with? Are we going to resent this relationship? And if you feel that at all, like, don't do it. Don't make it happen. Don't discount your rates to a place where you feel like you won't be happy taking that client on, but also don't have them so high that when someone does sign on with you, you get super nervous about working with them, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you bring up a really good point that like we are always still learning, and no one's a finished product. And you know, I think that makes you very relatable, because I know I feel that way. Like, oh my God, there's so much to know. So just to go off what Eleanor was saying, since there are so many things to do, like how do you prioritize your marketing in terms, like there's so many platforms, so many things you can do. So
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Well, so one thing I always tell people too, which this is kind of related, I'm so sorry, I like go off a little bit, but you have to always be learning and you have to always be in it, because I truly believe if you're not still in your own shit, then you can't help other people, right? Because if you have risen above the clouds and you can now see everything that's going on, and you're an expert, and like, how can you relate to what people are doing? Like, I feel like you have to be in it. Like, you have to have bad days. You have to have those moments where you doubt yourself and like need to like kind of like restart, you know, because otherwise how are you able to have the solutions and the new ideas to help someone else? So I would say, like, never be afraid of failure, never be afraid of pivot, like never be afraid of hiring a coach to help you with your own business and kind of like take another look at things, because I feel like that's what you need to be able to continue to help people. As far as like the time thing and like knowing what to focus on, my big focus for me right now is the content and my clients. So providing content, providing value, trying to do a lot more for free, you know, that I can. Like I wrote an ebook. It took me weeks, maybe months, but I was like, I want to get an ebook out. I want to get recipes out. I want to have value, right? And I think like just like figuring out a couple of those projects that like you could take on, even if you could only work on it for like 10 minutes a day, like have those like big things, you know, here next to you, and then delegate things. So as you're able to, like, I have someone who helps me with Pinterest. I have my friend Sienna who helps me edit my photos, because that is not something I can do or have time for. What else do I do? I have someone who helps me pitch brand partnerships as well, because that's an area that, again, it's not my strength. Like, I'm not really good at selling myself. I'm not good at negotiating. And so I would say, figure out the things you don't want to do or you're not good at. Can you cover those costs by way of that person helping you out? By way of people helping me with those tasks, I know I'll be bringing in more revenue to be able to pay them and feel freer about the work I'm doing.
Yeah. Such a good piece of advice, right? And when you were like really starting out and you didn't necessarily have the budget, were you like exchanging services with people? Were you bartering? How did you do that?
I would say I've always spent a lot of the money I make on this business back into the business in marketing and having people help with like some of the execution, because I've always taken on side hustles. Like, I've never been in a place where I'm like not working on something else, right? I don't want to ever be like super cash poor that I feel like I can't invest in my business. So like I said, I worked for 2 years as a TA for an online cooking school. Like, that was my job, but like no one really knew that because I wasn't really talking about that. I was talking about how, you know, I was building Health Coach Philly at the time. You know, I had Good Fast that helped provide some income. Now it's brand partnerships. Like, that's how I make my money. You know, I do invest heavily back into keeping it growing and keeping it thriving.
Yeah.
So I would say, sorry, I'm not really answering your question. I would say, like, figure out what you need to live off of and then what you can invest back into the business to have people help you to grow if that's possible. And you can find solutions that are not super expensive. Like, don't hire someone that's out of your reach or out of your means, but maybe having someone for $10 an hour to do some admin work for you, for like, you know, helping you schedule marketing posts or helping you do Facebook ads or helping you do Pinterest might be a good investment because it can bring in more revenue for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got really lucky. I have this like network of like video editors and audio editors, and they're all like, they're in Detroit and they all just got laid off. So they're like, I'll do anything you want. They're super talented. And I think that right now we're actually in a particular moment of like, everyone, you know, needs a job. So I think a lot of people will be doing things for he kind of said to me, he was like, just tell me what you can pay, because I need, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not willing to pass up any work right now. So it's such a good point. Like, just like reach out as much as you can.
Yeah, you never know. And some people would be open to bartering, you know, and like sometimes you can even find someone who wants to intern for you and in exchange for getting real life experience. Like, you can't talk about your clients necessarily, but you can talk about your process and how you do business and how you started, you know, so you could offer wisdom in return for helping with some blog posts, for example.
Awesome. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Jess. I was so excited to talk to you. I knew a lot of people who were like, send us the recording. So I'm so excited that this is here and available. And it was so much value to me, and I'm sure it was to so many others. So thank you so much.
Thank you again. And it's so nice to see your face and finally like meet you. And Eleanor, thanks for your question too.
Yeah, thank you. So everyone, we have one more of this webinar series next Thursday. It's going to be me. I'm going to be doing a roundup of everything I've learned and all the resources that I know are out there for entrepreneurs. So I hope you'll join me. So yeah, I'll see you next week. Thank you, Jess, again.
Thank you. Bye.